courageously continue with me on this sermon series on power. Today's theme is the power of signs, and I believe that this passage in Mark will show its relevance in our current times. So, previously in this series, I had to introduce what are definitions of power, and something we can work on as a foundation. Scientific definition is power is the rate of energy over time in which work is done or energy is converted. Power, as is defined in Webster's dictionary, is the capacity or the ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. And if we were to define spiritual power as a faith in a higher, it's a consciousness, an offering of a sense of peace and contentment, of confidence and hope. When we're connected with this limitless energy that's loving, we can feel good, we can feel positive, and relaxed. Now, when we talk about the power of signs, there may be signs that you'll encounter when you're out for a drive or a stroll that are pretty predictable. They'll tell you when to stop, where to go, warn you if there are dangers to avoid. But every once in a while, you'll encounter a sign that is determined to get a laugh out, or certainly to startle you to the point of questioning your sanity. So either by design or accident, some signs are just too significant to ignore. We have signs that really give us direction for our inner being. If we're confused or perplexed, if we're sad or depressed, we know those signs from the inside out. We can know that there is a sign of God in his cross. Most importantly, we know that God is always present, even if he skywrites his name on the sky. Of course, he can just state the obvious and say, did you want a sign? And those times we are misbehaving, he'll say, don't let me come down. Now this is a sign, I'm sorry it doesn't look, you can't see it properly, but this is actually a telephone post that was uplifted during the storm that actually looks like the sign of the cross. So though it wasn't intended to be in that shape, it really caught the person's attention. And so Bible scholars will tell us that a sign is a mark of persons or things that are distinguished to be made known. And in the scriptures, we generally address the senses to attest to a supernatural or divine power. So naturally, therefore, in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, there are signs that are assimilated to the miraculous, and that they really point toward a divine intervention. So there's a popular belief in this manner of communication between both the visible and the invisible that has always been and has been widespread. So these so-called natural explanations can either be ingenious or cogent, but they fail with the majority of people to explain anything. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church, and Charles Spurgeon, who were well-known prophets of God back in their day, were firm in their belief in the validity of the methods of intervention between man and God, just as much as Moses and Gideon met God in supernatural ways. So those who believe in God's Spirit does work in the world through signs and miracles, we have to include tragedies as well, because they function in this intellectual mix and matrix that shouldn't not stop us from involving our heads, our hearts, and our hands. That no tragedy or political upheaval these days will you find a religious leader or blogger of some type attempting to connect God's judgment with the current events. Some can say that these campfires in California and those in Southern California are a rap on a liberal agenda. Or here in California. Others have faulted the shootings in Orlando on a quote-unquote homosexual agenda, whatever that is. Many can argue that the mass shootings that we've experienced could have been prevented if it were not for a liberal or conservative stance. There's an instinct to interpret these current times in the broader lens of God's judgment. And that's nothing new. The examples appear not just in today's time, but even when the Bible was first written. There are those who believe that God's Spirit doesn't work in the world, but others have firmly held on to the signs and the miracles, and that these tragedies that have happened function as intellectual puzzles to be solved. But Jesus, in this passage, often talked about the end times. And certainly there's not a way that it can be supported in our modern scientific worldview. For Jesus, the belief that God controls history was fundamental to his perspective in all of his teachings. Not long before his arrest, Jesus was with the disciples in the temple. When they looked out, one of the disciples came and proclaimed his awesome outlook on the structure. He said, "Look, teacher, these large stones and these large buildings, indeed, ancient historians said that this temple in Jerusalem was truly magnificent. It was massive, not just in the stones in its building, but it was laid in gold." So given this awesome sight, Jesus' response kind of caught the disciples off guard. They said, "Do you see these great buildings?" He said, "Do you see these great buildings? And not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." So the disciples must have been in a mood to really gather what they just heard. Because Jesus sat opposite the temple on the Mount of Olives. And they had to wonder aloud, when is this going to happen? Will we get a sign that this will happen? And Jesus gives us his traditional roundabout way of explaining things. He warns those who could be led astray. He tells them not to be alarmed by wars and rumors of wars, which, if you ask me, are some of the most alarming prospects imaginable today. There are troubling times that are coming, Jesus says. They can include wars, earthquakes, and famines. But we are not to be afraid, because this is but the beginning of the birth pains, as stated in Mark 13:8. We will see troubling signs for troubling times. Jesus' response in his first century is equivalent to the famous propaganda poster that the British government put up during World War II, that boldly proclaimed, "Keep calm and carry on." So we always yearn to want to know more, just like the disciples. They really want to know every detail of their future steps and what is God's ultimate justice for us. When will it take place? It's just part of our human nature. Certainly the severity and the destination of future storms and tragedies can help save lives. But we, like the disciples, yearn for more. We want a blueprint. We want the details. themselves and others that they love by interpreting a sign of the time. So in this passage in Mark, Jesus uses language and terms common to other biblical books to reveal what is currently known to or hidden from the disciples. In Mark, this passage, and in Daniel and Revelations, we long for a future in which oppression is a thing of the past. But we should not read this as a recipe book for the end time. That the coming times will sometimes be described in very vague and rough, violent terms, but the ultimate end is it will be full of God's justice and peace. I want to say this with emphasis. Trusting God means living an expected and hopeful life for Christ's return. Trusting God means living an expected life of Christ's return. We can't be consumed with every world affair in terms of God's super plan. Our discipleship calls for faith in which ultimately, despite our present struggles, God's love is sovereign. He is omnipresent. We don't need to micromanage the signs of what's going on around us. Instead, we need to manage our lives to conform to God's vision of caring for our neighbors. That He calls us into asking and acting for justice, and loving our neighbors, and walking in peace. So, believers today can have a very different approach in terms of waiting for end times. And we know that people have read the Bible and have been misled by looking at these different storms to the point of either harming themselves or others. And so in this passage especially, I want to make sure that we know that God and Jesus is not overlooking any immediate danger. Instead, He's cautioning you not to fall for the false prophets who will tell you that these things are coming. And basically, He's saying don't fall for the okie doke. You know, it's really interesting that when these things happen, that people can point fingers at what is the cause. And I have to say, I had to just shake my head yesterday when a certain political figure said that the fires may not have happened if they raked their leaves. Okay? But whatever grabs headlines doesn't necessarily serve God and His neighbor. That hurricanes and fires and earthquakes and typhoons have left a horrific scar on our lives. But they've occurred all around the world to all the people God loves. That there are wars and conflicts that have existed for decades, and some of their seeds have lasted for centuries. And sadly, we know there'll be another storm. There'll be Armageddon. There will be another earthquake or tragedy. So we must break this cycle of interpreting these events as a way for Jesus to specifically warn against, and instead follow every opportunity we have to care for others who are without food, who need shelter, who yearn for love that goes beyond what is offered in desperate times. Jesus, in this vague answer, is to what God wants us to renew ourselves for His justice. But His instructions for caring for our neighbors is abundantly clear. When disaster hits, Jesus' followers need to get to work, and that's us, church. And we are to lead the time of destination, of disaster, to God alone. This passage is really fundamental in how we can see these two philosophies of religion from Jesus' time playing it out in our time. We can have people who are like the Pharisees, who see religion as a ritual. That means obeying certain rules and regulations. Jesus broke these regulations, and they were generally convinced that by breaking their rules, he was a bad person. He was one to be feared. It's like a man who believes that religion consists of going to church, reading the Bible, saying the grace before meals, having family worship, and carrying out all the external acts that are looked upon as being religious, and yet will never put him or herself out to do anything for anyone. They have no sense of sympathy or empathy, no desire to sacrifice, and they are so rigid in the beliefs of their orthodoxy that they are deaf to the call of the blind and the needy. And they can't feel the tears of the world. Jesus' view of religion is one of service. And that's what he calls us to do. It is a love of God and a love of his fellow man. That the ritual is irrelevant to what we do in our steps of life. We are called to love in action, church. The quote is, our friend, our brother, our Lord. What may thy service be? Nor name, nor form, nor ritual word, but simply to follow thee. So for Jesus, calling us today, the most important thing in the world was not to have a correct performance of ritual, but to have a spontaneous answer to the cry of the human need. And so to that end, the question has been asked. The answer has been modeled by his teachings and the widow who gave all. And the signs, my dear friends, are apparent for us all. Because our response can be, we can give our all.